The Rose of Ceylon, by Giovanni Sticco, copyright 2024 WGA West. 1757 Departure from Holland. The North Sea wind howled against the towering masts of the De Zeemeeuw, a Dutch East India Company vessel bound for the distant island of Ceylon. Pastor Willem Vandenberg stood at the deck railing, his cloak whipping around him, watching his homeland fade into the mist. Beside him, his wife, Anna, clutched the youngest daughter's hand. Their son, Vincent, barely 19, gazed at the horizon, caught between apprehension and excitement for the journey ahead. Their destination was Colombo, the heart of the Dutch colony in Ceylon, where Pastor Vandenberg was to oversee the Dutch Reformed Church. The voyage was long and perilous, marked by towering waves, the unrelenting sun at the equator, and the constant threat of disease. But as they neared the tropics, the scent of spice and distant rain mingled in the air, heralding the lush lands that awaited them. 2023 Colombo, Sri Lanka. Johnny Parker, an American history enthusiast, wandered through the streets of Colombo, drawn by his fascination with the island's colonial past. He found himself standing before an old church, its once white walls weathered by centuries of monsoons. The iron gates creaked as he pushed them open. The churchyard was a solemn place, dotted with weather-worn Gothic tombstones bearing Dutch inscriptions. Some were nearly illegible, their names lost to time. The scent of rain-dampened earth and frangipani flowers lingered in the air. Intrigued, Johnny stepped inside the church as Sunday Mass was underway. The high vaulted ceilings, supported by dark wooden beams, echoed with the sound of a choir. He took a seat at the back, his eyes tracing the intricate architecture. After the service, the minister, Pastor Joel, approached him with a warm smile. "You look like a man with questions," Joel said, extending a hand. Johnny chuckled. "I'm a history buff. This place, it's like stepping back in time." Pastor Joel nodded. "Then perhaps you'd like to hear a story, a tale of love, betrayal, and defiance. A story written in these very walls." Johnny's curiosity was piqued. "Go on." Joel led him to a side room lined with old books and artifacts. He reached for an aged leather-bound diary. This belonged to a woman named Rose. It tells the story of her forbidden love with Vincent Vandenberg, the pastor's son. Johnny leaned in. Forbidden love. Joel opened the book, revealing a fragile, dried rose pressed between the pages. It began in 1758. It was a humid Sunday morning when Rose Silver, 18 and radiant as the dawn, walked into the Dutch church with her family. She was of mixed descent. Her father, a prominent Sinhalese merchant, had converted to Christianity, ensuring his family's acceptance in colonial society. As she took her seat, she caught sight of Vincent Vandenberg across the nave. He was tall, with golden brown hair that fell just past his collar, his sharp blue eyes meeting hers. She smiled, her dimples deepening like waves parting for a ship. Vincent's pulse quickened. He had seen her before, but never had their eyes met like this, never had a look spoken so much. His father's voice echoed through the church, delivering the sermon, but Vincent heard none of it. He was lost in the silent conversation between himself and Rose. When the service ended, she cast him one last glance before stepping into the sunlight. For weeks, their stolen glances turned into secret exchanges. One evening, Vincent finally gathered the courage to speak to her after Mass. "I see you every Sunday," he said, his voice steady but his heart racing. "And every Sunday, I find myself waiting for the moment our eyes meet." Rose smiled, her cheeks warming. "And now that we are speaking, I find myself wanting more." She lowered her gaze, but Vincent saw the flicker of joy in her expression. But their budding romance was not to go unnoticed. One evening, Vincent's father confronted him, his voice stern. "What do you think this church is? A house of God, or a place for youthful folly?" Vincent's jaw clenched. "I love her, father." His father's face darkened. "She is not of our kind. You will end this foolishness." Vincent said nothing, but in his heart, he knew he would never let her go. Meanwhile, Rose faced her own trials. Her parents had arranged for her to marry Sarnath, a wealthy landowner. She wept when they told her, "But I do not love him," she pleaded. Her mother's face softened, but her father remained firm. "Love is a luxury. Security is not." That night, as rain poured over Colombo, Rose ran through the deserted streets to the church. She knocked on Vincent's door, drenched and trembling. He opened it, pulling her inside. "What's wrong?" "They want to marry me off," she whispered. Vincent took her hands in his grip warm and steady. "Then we leave. Together." She nodded. "1 week. Meet me at the docks at midnight." Under the cover of night, they fled by sea and later by foot. To the kingdom of candy, life there was different. They built a small home surrounded by flowering trees. They laughed, they loved, and in time, they welcomed a daughter, Lily. Years passed, and though their families never responded to their letters, they were happy. Until tragedy struck. One fateful night, as Rose labored to bring their second child into the world, complications arose. Despite the efforts of the midwives, she succumbed, leaving behind a newborn son and a shattered Vincent. She was only 24. 2023 Johnny's realization. Johnny sat in silence as Pastor Joel closed the diary. Vincent never recovered, Joel said. He turned to drink, wasting away until he, too, passed. Their children were raised by distant relatives. Johnny swallowed hard. Where are they buried? Joel handed him an old map. In Candy, you'll find them beneath the banyan tree. Days later, Johnny arrived at the secluded graveyard. He searched until he found a headstone, weathered but still legible. Vincent and Rose Vandenberg, love unbroken, even in death. A small red flower drifted down from the tree above, landing softly on Rose's grave. Johnny exhaled, a chill running through him. He swore, just for a moment, he could smell the faintest trace of jasmine and cinnamon, her perfume. He whispered, "Rose."